Part 23. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 221. As a small human survivor base, Dongshan Base is located in a small county town under the city. As a survivor base with a population of only tens of thousands of people. Most of the survivors in Dongshan Base are ordinary humans, and there are even fewer awakened ones. Going out to search for supplies and food on weekdays is already extremely dangerous. Even if a team is lost during the search, it is extremely painful for Dongshan Base. The existing guards in the base are not enough to face large zombies. It is precisely because of this that when facing the dilemma of zombies besieging the city, Dongshan Base will not hesitate to send help to Yuhei and Zilan, two human bases that are also shelters. Then the two bases will start the battle of redemption to recover human cities, eliminate zombie heretics in cities, and save survivors wandering in the ruins. Among them, Ji Yufeng led the law enforcement team, Wei Ying led the guard team and the mecha team of Zilan Base. Wang Daipen led the Shenglong Society under his command, Zhang Qinggui and Master Wufu led the search team. The four teams worked together to clear and recapture dozens of towns and cities. And now, with the convergence of the four rescue teams, this redemption battle to rescue humanity is finally coming to an end. A few kilometers away from the border of Dongshan Base. In a remote wilderness, a tragic battle between humans and zombies broke out here. The artillery fire was continuous, the smoke was everywhere, and the blurred flesh and blood of zombie monsters were everywhere. Looking ahead, the wilderness not far ahead was full of black and deformed zombies. Roar! These zombies had bloodshot eyes, their faces were full of hunger, their faces were blue with veins, and they rushed towards the human team in front of them with ferocious faces. The air was filled with a strong smell of blood and decay that stung the nose and mouth. The corpse gas that was about to become substantial was even more nauseating. Rows of tanks and military vehicles roared on the front battlefield, and the sky was filled with flames for a while, which was deafening. The surroundings were densely covered with guards in black uniforms. These human soldiers shouldered guns, pulled the triggers in their hands and kept spitting out flames at the sea of corpses in front of them. From time to time, you can see tall humanoid mechas distributed around the battlefield. The bodies of these mechas are made of high-tech metals with a full sense of machinery, well-equipped and powerful. Almost every mecha here is enough to match a B-level awakener. These mechas represent the highest level of human technology. Even other bases are all coveting the high-tech equipment of Zilan Base. With these unimaginable high-tech technologies, this is also one of the reasons why Zilan Base can become a large human base in one fell swoop. But even so, there are still a large number of high-level mutant zombies that break through the encirclement of guns and rush into the human team to launch the most violent attack. I saw a fat zombie with a huge body and twisted muscles rushing out of the group of corpses, taking heavy steps to grab a human guard. At this moment, accompanied by a wisp of space ripples that have not dispersed, a sharp white light flashed. In an instant, blood flew, and a dark blue arm full of meat fell to the ground. The fat zombie whose body turned into a meatball wailed, and the huge body fell backwards. However, a space vortex emerged behind him, and Ji Yufeng, who was wearing a white suit, held a space blade with a cold face. There was still blood stains on his side face, but his arm was waving again. In an instant, the fat zombie's head was cut in half by the space blade. White brain matter and scarlet blood splashed out, just splashing on the face of the man in guard uniform. The man woke up with a startled look of joy for surviving the catastrophe, and looked at the white figure in the air with gratitude. Ji Yufeng did not even look back, and a space wave appeared beside him, and his figure jumped and disappeared in the air. On the battlefield, white figures can be seen from time to time freely shuttling among the zombies. Every time they appear, they will harvest the lives of a large number of zombies like the god of death. Similarly, in this final battle between zombies and humans, many powerful awakeners also played a key role. Some awakeners of the mutant system suddenly changed their bodies and turned into strange beasts such as tiger men, leopard men, and werewolves, and then rushed into the zombies to fight head-on with a group of zombies. The awakeners of the superpower system have a wide range of abilities, and some awakeners of the superpower system with combat capabilities are as strong as the awakeners of the mutant system. Some awakeners of the superpower system with auxiliary abilities stand beside many soldiers, blessing the status of many soldiers and stacking buffs. In a moment, the awakened ones who emerged from all over the battlefield showed their might, like gods of war, and the morale of the human camp was greatly boosted. On the other side of the battlefield, a ball of scorching flames ignited the sky. A red-haired boy wearing goggles was surrounded by a group of zombies. The boy grinned, and energy burst out, and the cotton-white gloves on his hands were instantly ignited by the flames. The flames rose, and the originally soft gloves turned into a pair of metal-covered gauntlets. X gloves maximum power. The boy's whole body was wrapped in fiery red flames, and it seemed that a deep red crystal core was gradually generated on his forehead. Linfeng shouted loudly, and the flames swirling around him were blasted out. Countless zombie monsters around him were burned by the flying waves of flames, and painful wails came from his hoarse throat. The zombies behind him launched a siege on Linfeng at this moment, but the eyes of the dozens of mutated zombies rushing forward suddenly glowed with a strange purple light. The pupils also turned from bloodthirsty to hollow in an instant. In the blink of an eye, these controlled zombies were fighting with their companions. A large gray fog shrouded these zombies. Immediately, a cold light flashed through, the roars of the zombies in the fog disappeared, and Shwekinya's figure walked out. The bloodthirsty monster behind him has been turned into pieces of corpses. After absorbing a large number of corpses and ghosts in the misty space, the energy in Shwekinya's body has made a qualitative leap. Astonishingly, he is another powerful A-level awakener. Amitabha. Suddenly, a chant of the Buddha's name came from the battlefield, and it was as clear as a bell and a big loo, and it reached everyone's mind, deafening. The surrounding zombie monsters actually fell into silence for a moment after hearing this low Buddhist chant. In the corner of the battlefield, a short monk wearing a white robe but with a scar on his head sat cross-legged on a futon, slowly chanting the name of the Buddha. A large number of high-level zombies have gathered around it, and there are even powerful beings emitting S-level energy fluctuations. But there was no attack for a long time. They instinctively fear the golden light emanating from the monk and the Buddha's name uttered from his mouth. As the sound of the Buddha's name resounded, heavy slapping and roaring sounds continued to come from the modified truck behind the monk enlightenment. Suddenly, Wufa's voice stopped, and the Buddha's voice that frightened the surrounding zombies finally disappeared. In an instant, countless powerful high-level zombies opened their fangs and claws and rushed towards Wufa. Empty killing, empty evil, empty silence, empty destruction. Save all sentient beings. As the old man shouted, the carriage door behind him suddenly opened. I saw 4 black figures jumping out of the carriage like hungry wolves. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 222. As these 4 black figures rushed out of the carriage, they rushed into the surrounding corpses like evil tigers pouncing on prey. From a distance, I thought they were 4 ferocious dogs. And the moment these 4 figures rushed into the group of corpses, there was a frightening low roar, and blood splashed in the air along with the broken limbs. Only then did everyone see the true faces of these 4 figures. These 4 figures were not the tigers, leopards, or wolves they thought they were, but they were clearly 4 unkempt human men with iron chains wrapped around their bodies. I saw these 4 beast-like men of different shapes, tall, short, fat and thin, but their limbs were tied up with thick iron chains, and there was a collar for livestock around their necks. The iron collar had already strangled their necks with deep blood marks, but the four of them seemed unaware. Their faces were ferocious, their eyes were bloodshot, and they looked like crazy demons. Even the attack method turned into the most primitive beast, lying on the ground on all fours, biting and killing among the corpses. The zombies' broken internal organs and limbs were torn into pieces like parts. The bloody scenes stimulate everyone's senses. What is even more frightening is that the aura exuding from these four beast-like men has reached S level. They are. Some humans who didn't know the truth looked at the four figures eating among the corpses with trembling expressions. These are the four disciples of Master Wufa. John King Gui walked by holding rosary beads in his hand, looked at the four men who looked like jungle beasts, and said, "They were originally powerful wanderers in the ruins of a city outside the base, but they were cruel and wanted to tear the earth apart and become kings. They repeatedly killed search teams outside the base to plunder resources. In the end, Master Enlightenment personally took action and converted these four people into disciples." Duhua. The guard next to him swallowed and looked at the four men whose limbs were tied with iron chains with a strange expression. Veins popped up on the faces of the four men. The thick iron chains had rubbed sparks on the ground, and their limbs and wrists were covered with old blood scabs. The ends of the iron chains were still locked in the dark carriage. This look of life being worse than death is not just as simple as transformation, right? As the four enlightened disciples joined the battle, the zombie side quickly became at a disadvantage. Although these four men were deprived of their rationality due to long-term torture and pain, they were extremely strong physically and did not hesitate to exchange injuries for injuries. When fighting, they use all possible means, even more ferocious than zombies. Brother, it seems that the situation has led to the human side. Somewhere in the battlefield, Dyer and Heike were standing around Muchu, and the three of them were watching this fierce battle. Dyer looked at the zombies who were gradually falling into a disadvantage, feeling bored. Suddenly he looked at Muchu and smiled. "Brother, why don't we put more pressure on them?" The girl just wanted to watch the fun, and she was not interested in the outcome of this battle. Muchu, on the other hand, stared at the battlefield ahead with a calm expression and muttered in her heart, "System, start clocking in." Bite. A cold mechanical voice suddenly responded in his mind, "Insufficient permission. It is detected that the host has not arrived at the check-in location, and the check-in failed." Really? Muchu was not disappointed with the system's response, or she had expected it. The system describes the check-in location as the final battlefield of the Battle of Redemption. A certain suspicion in her heart was confirmed. Muchu raised her head to look at the sky in the distance and suddenly said, "It seems that Lu Qianqian was right." On the far side of the sky, there was a thick black haze, as if something terrible was brewing. Half a day passed, and the zombie tide gradually subsided under the heavy blows of the awakeners and artillery fire. There was not even a destruction-level existence seen in the entire battle, and countless zombie heretics have been wiped out in human hands. The entire battlefield was already covered with mountains of corpses and seas of blood. So far, most of the humans in the team have been killed or injured, and even the awakened ones are covered in scars and suffered heavy casualties. Ji Yufeng, who was covered in blood, pulled out the space blade from a zombie body and looked at the messy battlefield, speechless for a long time. "Is it finally over?" A guard slowly stood up from the pool of blood and looked at the corpses everywhere as if in a dream. "We won, humanity won. We survived." The ecstatic cheers of mankind are constantly heard from all around. This is a victory for mankind. Ji Yufeng slowly walked to Wei Ying, who also looked excited. Wei Ying patted Ji Yufeng's shoulder and said happily, "We finally completed our mission." But Ji Yufeng's expression did not show any happiness, and he suddenly said, "Where are the people at Dongshan base?" As soon as these words came out, Wei Ying, who was standing next to Ji Yufeng, was startled. Yes, this place is only a few kilometers away from Dongshan base. But this war has lasted for so long, why haven't we seen reinforcements from Dongshan base for so long? In an instant, Wei Ying's forehead was covered with cold sweat, and he suddenly shouted, "Feng Jun, where is Feng Jun?" Feng Jun was the envoy sent by Dongshan base to Yuhei for help this time. Before the battle began, Ji Yufeng had informed Feng Jun to contact Dongshan base for support. Although they never expected the reinforcements sent by this small base to do anything. A middle-aged man in shabby clothes ran hurriedly from a distance, his face pale. "You mean there has been no news from Dongshan base?" Feng Jun's face was extremely pale and anxious. "I tried to contact with the communication device given to me by the base, but the base has not responded until now." As soon as Feng Jun finished speaking, Wei Ying's face became extremely embarrassed. A terrifying idea has emerged in his mind. Wei Ying and Ji Yufeng looked at each other and immediately informed the entire army. Everyone is ready, and immediately set off to Dongshan base. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 223. Above the wilderness, the earth trembled, and the human coalition forces headed by Yuhei base galloped past. After a fierce battle, mankind. The losses of the coalition forces were not unbearable. The tanks and military vehicles in the front row were covered in bloodstains and scratches, and many of the vehicles in the rear were even more dilapidated. Most of the humans recruited were killed or injured, and even many of the awakened ones in the team died in the ferocious tide of corpses. However, just when the large group of zombies were wiped out, everyone thought that this thrilling decisive battle was over. However, Ji Yufeng suddenly ordered the entire army to assemble urgently and quickly went to the Dongshan base where they were rescued. Although there are still destructive-level powerful combatants like Wang Daipen and Wu Fa in the coalition forces, they have noble status. But generally strategic issues are decided jointly by Wei Ying, Ji Yufeng, who is the captain of the combat force, and He Anping from Zilan base. Therefore, although many soldiers were exhausted physically and mentally, they still did not dare to neglect at all and regrouped and rushed to the final destination. "Captain, according to the positioning display, we are about to arrive at Dongshan base." Wei Ying and Ji Yufeng looked at each other and spoke to the communication device in the car. "How's the drone inspection going?" A voice came from the communicator. "There is a strange magnetic field fluctuation within 2 kilometers of Dongshan base. Under the interference of this magnetic field fluctuation, the drone cannot carry out exploration work." Wei Ying took a deep breath. "I understand. I am ready to connect to the backup communication channel and pass the message back to the base at any time." "Yes." Wei Ying looked at Ji Yufeng again, his expression solemn as never before. "Hopefully it won't be what we thought." The coalition convoy raced across the land, tanks and military vehicles rolled over the road, and there were groups of mechas escorting them on both sides. Soon, the vague outline of a town was already in front of everyone's eyes. The location of the city gate is covered by materials such as cement and concrete, which looks like a wall. Mottled cracks have appeared on the wall, and the sallow material looks even more fragile. From the appearance, it is not difficult to see that the situation of this small human base is quite embarrassing. However, even though such a huge convoy rushed to the wall, there was still no movement in the Dongshan base. Wei Ying frowned slightly. "Release the flare." As several guards shouldered the gun barrel and pulled the trigger, a row of brilliant flares bloomed in the sky like fireworks. After another long while, there was still no response from the town, and the city walls made of reinforced concrete stood mottled. Ji Yufeng suddenly said, "Come in." Following Ji Yufeng's order, the guards in the front row immediately controlled the tank and crashed into the city wall. With a loud bang, the mottled earth wall that had already cracked was instantly knocked down by a row of solid tanks made of steel. The coalition troops filed in at the pace of the tanks and quickly entered the small base that asked for their support. What's going on? As soon as Fang entered the base, everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them. Looking around, the houses collapsed and were devastated, overgrown with weeds, and surrounded by ruins. A thin layer of dust has accumulated on the ground, and old blood stains can still be vaguely seen. The entire town was extremely silent, as deserted as an abandoned ruin. Everyone got out of the car and looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. They risked their lives along the way, breaking through the ruins of cities one after another and rushing to support them. What they saw was a deserted base. The situation we were most worried about has happened. Wei Ying and Ji Yufeng stood in front of the team, looking at the ruins of the base that had turned into ruins, with mixed feelings. But Ji Yufeng seemed to have discovered something, and suddenly stepped forward under everyone's puzzled gazes. He was seen bending down, reaching out to touch a broken mirror on the side of the road. Ji Yufeng's pupils shrank, and he suddenly stood up, stroking the dust on his fingertips. He was so harsh that he already noticed something unusual. Judging from the thickness of the dust, this base has been abandoned for at least 3 months. What? Wei Ying also came to his senses, his expression extremely shocked. But half a month ago, Yuhei base received a request for help from Zilan base. Suddenly, Wei Ying thought of something, turned around and shouted. Feng Jun, where is Feng Jun? Half a month ago, Dongshan base sent Feng Jun as a liaison to ask for help from Yuhei base. Everyone looked at each other, but this time Feng Jun and his men were nowhere to be seen in the team. Seeing this, Mu Qiu turned to the team and said, "Look, does this look like a coliseum?" As soon as he finished speaking, the ground where the coalition forces were suddenly trembled. Before anyone could react, a row of extremely tall steel fences suddenly rose up behind the wall that they had originally knocked down. Immediately afterwards, tall and solid walls and fences were raised around the entire town, instantly trapping everyone in the town. Mysterious figures wearing gray and black robes suddenly appeared above the crowd, their faces hidden under the hoods, making it difficult to see their true faces. Instantly, the suddenly appearing black-robed figures surrounded the human coalition of thousands of people. Several figures in purple robes appeared in front of everyone. Among them, a middle-aged man in purple robes, with a haggard face, was Feng Jun, who had disappeared for a long time. Heterogeneous cult. Everyone immediately recognized the identity of the person, with panic and surprise. They did not expect to encounter the long-lurking heterogeneous cult at the Dongshan base. The Dongshan base was destroyed several months ago, and there was no base asking for help. From the beginning to the end, it was your heterogeneous cult that was behind it. Ji Yufeng stared at Feng Jun in the air calmly, but his words sounded like thunder in everyone's ears. The rescue operation was a scam from the beginning. All this is a conspiracy of the heterogeneous cult. Even the professionally trained guards found it difficult to accept this cruel fact. As expected of the White Death of Yuhei, you have analyzed most of the truth so quickly. Feng Jun's honest face showed a grim smile. So, can you guess our purpose of luring the snake out of its hole? Wei Ying's pupils trembled. What? The captain of the guard, who was a soldier, immediately felt terrified and his back was cold. Yes, I guess at this time, your Yuhei is about to follow the footsteps of Dongshan base. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 224. Yuhei base is hundreds of kilometers away from Dongshan base. Dark clouds gradually drifted in from the distance, and a dark haze shrouded the sky above Yuhei base. Sparse drizzle gradually began to fall in the sky. The walls of the Yuhei base are made of special metal reinforcements. It can be said to be a copper wall and an iron wall, with tight barriers. On weekdays, there are even guards patrolling and watching. It is impossible for ordinary zombie monsters to break through this solid line of defense that protects the human safety zone. www. However, the gradually spreading dark clouds in the sky seem to have no tendency to stop, and the raindrops in the sky gradually become clearer. The guards guarding the city were huffing and puffing out of boredom as usual, complaining about the unsatisfactory weather. Although the work of guarding the city gate is boring, it is better than having to worry about safety, and the reward is quite generous. It's better than risking one's life to fight those zombie monsters in the ruins. This is one of the reasons why so many people rush to join the guard. However, today's situation seems to be a little different from usual. Suddenly there was a vibration in the distant ground, and the sound of rollers rubbing against the ground came from far too near, like the roar of a steel beast. The companion next to him suddenly looked in one direction and exclaimed, "Then, what is that?" Before they could react, a sparking missile bombarded them from the distant sky. The ground in front of the wall was bombarded with a huge crater, and all the guards defending the city were reduced to rubbish by the violent missiles. Immediately afterwards, countless missiles and artillery fire fell from the sky like the Milky Way pouring down, and they all bombarded the thick and wide wall. Even the reinforced city walls were unable to withstand such continuous bombardment. Within a few dozen breaths, a huge gap was blasted out of the city wall that was tens of feet high. Countless tall mecha figures suddenly appeared on the distant horizon. The missile launchers on the shoulders of these mechas were still smoking, and the energy drive devices on the chests were flashing with blue light. There was a buzzing sound in the sky, and a dark red mecha with a pair of mechanical wings on its back flew through the air. The red mecha held a giant laser blade and instantly split open the crack in the city wall. In an instant, groups of mechas filed in, trailing long tail flames behind them. In less than a quarter of an hour, the roar of collapsing buildings and the pitiful wails of humans were heard from everywhere in the Yuhei base. The originally peaceful safe zone was destroyed in an instant, and the entire Yuhei base was instantly plunged into flames of war and gunpowder smoke. The piercing sirens echoed over Yuhei base. Almost at the same time that the base was attacked, the high-rise building located in the center of the base had received the message. There was a loud bang, and Xiao Hanyan slapped the table, with a rare look of annoyance on his frosty face. Where are those mechas now, and how many are there? Besides Xiao Hanyan, a group of senior officials from Yuhei rushed here a moment after receiving the news. A guard looked anxious and said, "Those mechas broke through the city wall in the northern area of the base and then rushed along the northern suburbs. The guards patrolling the northern area have lost news." According to the news from the guards patrolling the North District a quarter of an hour ago, it has been determined that these mechas come from Zilan base. In terms of number, it should be no less than 1,000. When the bad news came, as soon as the guard finished speaking, the expressions of all the senior officials of Yuhei became extremely embarrassed. How could they not see the purpose of Zilan base at this moment? They all yelled, "These bastards have obviously planned to attack Yuhei while the main force of the base is assisting Dongshan and the base is empty of troops. Tearing up the covenant and taking advantage of others' danger is a waste of human virtue." A group of Yuhei senior officials were so angry that their faces turned red, accusing Zilan base of openly tearing up the alliance. He even retaliated against the Yuhei base, which was also in the human camp, betraying his faith and making him stupid. Enough. During the commotion, Xiao Hanyan suddenly let out a sweet cry, and the scene suddenly fell silent. Everyone's eyes are on the iceberg queen. Xiao Hanyan's ability and strategy are indispensable for the Yuhei base to be where it is today. How many combat forces are there in the base now? The guard replied with a livid face, "Most of the troops in the base have been sent to implement the redemption plan. Currently, with the addition of the newly recruited guard team, the base has about 3,000 available combat forces, of which the number of awakened ones is less than 400. As soon as this statement came out, a bucket of cold water was poured on the heads of many senior officials in Yuhei. The content of the original alliance concluded by the three bases was: after the Battle of Redemption, the cities recovered along the way will be divided according to the contribution of the three bases in the battle. In order to gain more territory, the Yuhei base devoted most of its available combat power to this battle to regain humanity. Only a small number of troops are left to prevent possible zombie attacks. However, no one believed that there was any hidden danger of corpse tide around Yuhei base. But no one expected that at this juncture, Zilan base would choose to backstab Yuhei base, a fellow human survivor. Xiao Hanyan frowned slightly. Can we contact Wei Ying and Ji Yufeng? A man next to him shook his head. The base's signal was interfered by an unknown electromagnetic wave, and the communication function was completely blocked. Everyone looked at each other. There was no doubt that this must be the work of Zilan base again. A senior executive suddenly suggested, why don't we take people to evacuate here first and seek assistance from other bases? No one responded. They knew what it meant to lose a safe base in this doomsday. Suddenly, a guard rushed in from a panic, his chest heaving, and his expression was extremely anxious. South District, a large group of zombies suddenly appeared in the South District, and now they are invading the center of the base. What? Many Yuhei senior executives have not yet recovered from the tension, and there is another explosive news. Some people were even scared to the ground, sweating profusely. Now the north and south sides of the base are besieged, they are really attacked from both sides, and they can't escape. How could the wall of the southern area be broken by zombies so quickly? Someone discovered the problem. Logically, it was impossible for those zombies to break through the obstacles of the reinforced wall so quickly. The wall was opened from the inside of the base. So many coincidences happened in one day. How could everyone not understand that all this was a conspiracy of the Zilan base? But now that things have come to this, what they have to consider is how to face the current terrible and dangerous situation. There is no doubt that this is the most dangerous situation since the establishment of Yuhei. Everyone cast their eyes on Xiao Hanyan, who had a cold face. Now they can only pin their hopes on the unparalleled Queen of Yuhei. Xiao Hanyan's eyes were sharp, and she could not afford to think too much at this time. Call all available troops, resist the invaders with all their strength, and contact the communication signal of the front line troops again. In addition, be ready to start Meow Meow at any time. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 225. Careful. There was a thunderous explosion on the ground, and thick smoke from the explosion rose everywhere. Just listen to a series of whoosh sounds resounding through the sky. Immediately afterwards, more than a dozen sparking missiles were fired across the sky towards the coalition forces. The missile was followed by a dense rain of light blue light bombs. Suddenly, a thick and wide wall of lavender light appeared in front of the team. Dozens of missiles bombarded the wall of light, and the wall of light transformed from supernatural energy was instantly bombarded with cracks like lenses. Thousands of coalition troops behind him also survived. The guard eagle's hands turned into steel claws, and its body was as fast as a falcon. It blocked several laser bullets with a wave of its hand. He looked at the tall humanoid mechas in the distance with an indignant expression. What no one expected was: these combat troops from Zilan base are now standing together with the alien cultists. Just now, the Zilan mecha located at the rear of the coalition team suddenly turned back and launched a fierce attack on the soldiers of Yuhei base. Countless guardsmen who had not had time to react were bombarded to death by laser fire. The original allies stood on the opposite side of the team at the critical moment. This was unexpected by all the Yuhei troops present. At this point, Dongshan base has long ceased to exist, and the reinforcements from Zilan base have actually joined forces with the heterogeneous religion. The reinforcements at Yuhei base were instantly trapped in a lonely battle, and the human coalition composed of the three bases became a joke. Have you planned this for a long time? Wei Ying stared at a tall white humanoid mecha in front of him with a pair of falcon-like eyes. Unlike other gray and black mechas, the armor equipped on the white mechas is obviously more sophisticated. The driver of this all-white mecha is none other than He Enping, the captain of the Zilan base combat force. The hatch on the chest of the white mecha opened, and He Enping's helmeted face appeared. Still wearing a gentleman-like face, he looked at Wei Ying and sneered. As you can see, this is the truth. Feng Jun, who was wearing a purple robe, stood on the shoulders of the white mecha and said sarcastically. From the beginning to the end, the so-called Dongshan base is a scam, and the people in the game are everyone at the Yuhei base. Wei Ying said angrily, you have openly joined forces with a foreign cult to frame human compatriots. Are you not afraid that your Zilan base will be spurned by other bases and attack them in groups? He. The communication signals here are blocked. Who would know everything that happens here? Besides, what if other bases find out? Yes, in the apocalypse, everyone is in danger. How can other bases cause trouble for the Zilan base that is thousands of miles away because of the annexation of Yuhei? The high-tech products produced in Zilan base are too tempting for other human bases. It is impossible for other bases to give up their transactions with Zilan base. At most, they will secretly be vigilant in future contacts and not follow in the footsteps of Yuhei base. Countless black-robed alien believers were suspended in the air, and their faces could not be seen clearly under the cover of their hoods. But there was a faint smile on their lips, as if they were mocking the ignorant Yuhei reinforcements below. Not far away, many guards and soldiers of Yuhei suddenly became angry, hating the mecha troops in front, and yelling at Zilan base. Some people were livid. They were worried about their families hundreds of kilometers away at the Yuhei base. Wei Ying glanced at the alien cultists and mecha troops in front. He glanced at Ji Yufeng, with strong fighting spirit and murderous intent flashing in his eyes. At this point, they have no choice but to break through the siege and rush back to Yuhei as soon as possible. The number of their team is obviously superior, and there are countless awakened ones. Moreover, there are 2 destruction-level guardians present. Even the mecha troops and the heterogeneous religion in Zilan base together will not be their opponent. Belong to Yuhei, follow me to destroy the enemy army. Wei Ying shouted loudly, and on the ruins of the wasteland, the Jade Navy fleet instantly launched a fierce attack on the enemy troops in front. In an instant, artillery fire continued and smoke filled the sky. The original 3-party base jointly launched a rescue operation to eliminate zombies, which instantly turned into a human civil war. The Guard Eagle rushes to the forefront of the battlefield, his hands have turned into steel eagle claws, and his eyes are as sharp as an eagle. This is his superpower, the steel-clawed falcon. However, just as the Guard Eagle's steel claws tore a black-robed man into pieces, the falcon's instinct made his heart beat wildly. Suddenly, 2 hound-like figures came towards him, and at the same time, there was a blast of chilling wind behind him. Wei Ying's pupils shrank suddenly, and he swayed to avoid the fatal attack on his chest, but 2 more figures came behind him to attack him. Suddenly, a white figure flashed next to Wei Ying. Ji Yufeng was seen holding the double space blades, blocking Wei Ying's last hit. But even so, there is still a figure that rushes to Wei Ying's chest like a ghost, and a claw mark with strong murderous intent strikes across the air. A bloody hole was suddenly found in Wei Ying's chest, and he fell backwards and fell to the ground. Elder brother. Wei Ling rushed to Wei Ying's side and helped him up. Wei Ying stood up and looked at the 4 figures in front of Ji Yufeng with a surprised expression. No, it's not so much a human figure, but 4 hounds crawling on the ground. I saw 4 men in ragged clothes and unkempt faces crawling on the ground, their faces distorted, their eyes bloodshot, and full of violent murderous intent. His limbs were bound by iron chains, and his neck was tightened by an animal collar. This is Wei Ying's pupils were shaking, and he was very familiar with the four figures in front of him. Before he could recover from the shock, a short monk figure suddenly appeared behind the four men crawling on the ground. Those who attacked Wei Ying turned out to be one of the three guardians of the Jade Sea base, four disciples of Master Wu Fa. Everyone, including Ji Yufeng and Wei Ying, never expected that the guardian of their Jade Sea would stop in front of the troops. At this moment, Feng Jun, wearing a purple robe, appeared in front of the short monk and slowly said, "Sir, the other side is ready." It wasn't until Feng Jun finished speaking that Wu Fa's short figure finally appeared in front of everyone. As enlightenment appeared, more figures of pagan cultists in black robes appeared around him. Master Wu Fa's old face still had a look of indifference, looking solemn and majestic. Only this time, the Taoist robe Wu Fa was wearing disappeared, and was replaced by a red robe like the pagan cult next to him, as deep as blood. Amitabha. Among the crowd, Mu Chiu's expression changed slightly as she stared behind the four men crawling on the ground like hounds. The figure of the enlightened man in red robe was reflected in his eyes. Mu Chiu slowly said, 12 Immortal Priests. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo. Chapter 226. Something unexpected happened to everyone. Looking at the short monk surrounded by a group of heterogeneous believers, everyone's heart slowed down for a moment. What's going on? The guardians of their Yuhei base actually sided with the heterogeneous religion. Everyone looked at Wu Fa in disbelief, but the fact was right in front of them. Master, you are. Zhang Qinggui walked out of the crowd tremblingly, with a flattering smile on his face, and the hand holding the rosary began to tremble unconsciously. Enlightenment is the biggest backer behind him, and it is also related to his prosperity and wealth. It can be said that the reason why Zhang Qinggui was able to start up in Yuhei and become one of the three leaders of the command base was that Wu Fa played a large role in it. In the past few years, Zhang Qinggui has also done a lot of things for enlightenment, both overt and covert, all in order to please this backer. But even Zhang Qinggui never knew the relationship between Wu Fa and the heterogeneous religion. At this moment, he couldn't tell where Wu Fa was following, but he could only hope to stand in line at the critical moment and see what Wu Fa's attitude was towards him. Before Zhang Qinggui finished speaking, a beast-like roar suddenly came from his ears. I saw the four disciples of enlightenment with ferocious gleams in their eyes, and they threw Zhang Qinggui's fat body to the ground like vicious dogs. Immediately afterwards, there was Zhang Qinggui's miserable scream and the sound of grinding teeth as he gnawed on flesh and blood, which made people shudder. No one would have thought that Zhang Qinggui, one of the three leaders of the Yuhei base, would die so hastily in the mouths of his fellow humans. Zhang Qinggui never imagined until his death that he would be as contemptible as an ant in the eyes of Master Wu Fa. Amitabha. Wu Fa didn't even look at Zhang Qinggui, and looked at the people in Yuhei with slightly narrowed eyes. Dear donors, only by submitting to our religion can you have a chance of survival. The voice of enlightenment is not loud, but it reaches everyone's ears like a bell. Majestic and solemn, as if stating an established fact. I didn't expect that the person with the deepest lurk in the base would be you. Wei Ying covered the torn flesh and blood on his chest. Even he had never expected that the enlightenment of one of the three guardians in the base and a veteran figure would actually be an undercover agent of the heterogeneous religion. I am a member of the holy religion, so why should I hide? Wu Fa's calm words undoubtedly made the gloom in everyone's hearts deepen. Even the guardians are undercover agents planted by the enemy. How many informants from the alien sects are there in the Jade Sea? Wei Ying frowned slightly. The current crisis had exceeded his expectation. He suddenly looked at Wang Deipen in the distance and said, President Wang, please take action to open a way for me, the Yuhei people, to survive. At the moment, the only person in their team who can compete with Wu Fa is Wang Deipen, who is also at the destruction level. But Wang Deipen's next action made everyone in Yuhe even more unexpected. I saw Wang Deipen in the team slowly walking aside and standing at the boundary of the battlefield. All members of the Shenlong Club should be withdrawn by me. Immediately afterwards, Wang Deipen looked at the monk enlightenment who was surrounded by pagan believers. "Monk, you must remember our agreement." Enlightenment, he clasped his hands together and said, "Amitabha." This scene instantly shocked all the soldiers in Yuhe, and Wei Ying was so pale that he was speechless. Tianlai Novel Network. Mu Qiu looked at Dyer beside her with crooked eyes. "Look, I just said there will be more interesting things later." A deep haze enveloped the Yuhe base, and the raindrops dripping from the clouds gradually became denser. But the Yuhe base below is in a mess. Houses collapsed, artillery fire continued, and countless tall mechas passed over the ground, splashing mud and sand all over the ground. The laser beams all over the sky were like a shower, the roar of the explosions was ear-splitting, and the screams and roars of zombies echoed on the streets. For a time, the base was crowded, and the survivors fled in panic, falling into unprecedented panic. Wails, screams, and cries for help are endless. The humanoid mecha, which was several feet tall, ran rampant on the streets of the base, paying no attention to the zombies and humans beneath its feet. Bloodthirsty zombies are rampant in the city, and the surging heads are full of ferocity and hunger, gnawing at the survivors in the base wantonly. Just like that, huge mechas and dense groups of corpses instantly occupied the periphery of the Yuhe base. Countless survivors died tragically at the mouths of zombies, and the remaining humans poured into the inner ring of the central area of the base as if they were fleeing. This is the last refuge of mankind in Yuhe. As the mechas and corpses continued to approach, a burst of fierce gunfire suddenly sounded on the streets near the center of the base. Thousands of guards were seen pouring out of the streets and alleys, carrying cannon barrels on their shoulders and machine guns in hand, launching the most violent attack on the zombie mechas that were rushing towards them. The dense bullets shot into the corpses like sparks. Some low-level zombies with fragile bodies were shot into sieves in an instant, but for those high-level zombies, the blood spattered when the bullets penetrated the flesh actually activated their ferocious nature, making them even more murderous. Bullets have little effect on tall mechas whose entire bodies are made of high-density metal. Only the bombardment of artillery fire can slow down the pace of these steel monsters, but it is difficult to equalize the current disadvantageous situation by doing so alone. Suddenly, when the mecha army was galloping, the ground under the feet of dozens of mechas only a few hundred meters away from the central street suddenly sank. The solid ground turned into a clear lake in an instant, and the dozen mechas sank into the ground like falling into the deep sea. Ripples surged in the clear lake that the earth turned into, and a vague figure swam quickly under the lake. Wherever it passed, the ground turned into a rippling lake, and it returned to its original state in an instant. And the mecha zombies on the path were embedded deep underground like sinking into a deep pit. A figure swam in the lake that the ground turned into and arrived in front of the street. The water rippled like a disc, and a slender figure rose from the lake, with hair like a waterfall and a beautiful face. Major. When this figure emerged from the lake, it attracted the exclamations of the guards. The slender figure that appeared on the battlefield was the Ice Queen of Yuhe base, Xiao Hanyan. Xiao Hanyan was still wearing a white military uniform, but her lower body below the waist was completely unlike a human figure. The light blue fish tail covered with scales, the tail fins swayed on the water, the fins grew on the ears, and even the transparent scales on both sides of the cheeks could be vaguely seen. This is the awakened superpower of Xiao Hanyan, the leader of Yuhe base, known as the Ice Queen. Special type mutation superpower, title Mermaid. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 227. When Xiao Hanyan's figure appeared, an army of mechas also stopped. The strange thing is that those terrifying bloodthirsty zombies also froze, their eyes flashing with hunger, but they stopped attacking. There was a sound of jets in the sky, and a humanoid mecha with a deep red body fell from the sky. The hatch on the mecha's chest opened, revealing a thin face with a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks. The skinny man looked at the slender figure rising from the lake and said with a sinister smile, "First time we meet, the Queen of Yuhei. Captain Zhang Li of the 3rd Combat Force of Xiaox Island Base, I'm glad to meet you." Xiao Hanyan's face was as cold as frost, and he replied with a cold and unceremonious tone. "Is this how Zilan Base treats its allies?" Kylie's eyes as big as sesame seeds narrowed. "What Chief Xiao said is wrong. Our Zilan Base aims to save all mankind from the catastrophe of the end of the world. Everything we do now is for the rejuvenation of our human race in the future." Xiao Hanyan snorted coldly, "You seduced zombies to murder fellow humans, kill humans, and provoke civil war among humans for the sake of human revival." First, he pretended to form an alliance with the Yuhei base, but in fact he stabbed him in the back at a critical moment, and also used Yuhei's hands to eliminate zombie monsters in more than a dozen cities. By then, both the territory and resources covering hundreds of kilometers will be under the control of Zilan Base. The efforts of tens of thousands of soldiers on the Jade Sea were in vain for the Zilan Base, and everyone scolded the Zilan Base for its sinister intentions. This is a necessary sacrifice for the sake of the righteousness of the human race. Of course, if the Yuhei side can join us and become a subordinate of Zilan Base, there will naturally be no need to continue this battle. At that time, our mutual aid agreement will still be valid, and we can jointly create a new era for all mankind. Why not? John Kiley looked at the cold-faced Queen of the Jade Sea with a smile, looking at her graceful figure wantonly with lewd eyes. A cold light flashed deep in Xiao Hanyan's eyes. Both the other party's words and his lewd eyes made her feel sick. Immediately afterwards, Xiao Hanyan gave Zhang a clear response in the most direct way. "I saw hundreds of awakened people suddenly rushing out from both sides of the street, and they all attacked in the direction of the corpses as if they had set up an ambush. At the moment when the army of awakened ones rushed out, a row of military tanks suddenly appeared on the horizon behind Xiao Hanyan. As the rising cannon barrel made a shocking explosion, countless cannonballs bombarded the numerous mecha armies. Thousands of guards armed with firearms also pulled the triggers at the enemy in front. In an instant, a brutal battle is about to break out. Obstinate." A sarcastic smile appeared on Zhang Kai's straight face, and he turned to control the Crimson Mecha and lead the Mecha army behind him to charge. At the beginning of the war, many awakened people from Yuhei base crossed the tall mechas in a targeted manner and attacked the dense group of corpses at the rear. In an instant, flesh and blood splattered, and wails spread everywhere. The guns and artillery from the Yuhei base fired at the Mecha army like rain and rain. The continuous artillery fire struck the Mecha's shell with ferocious momentum like meteors and meteorites. Boom! A huge explosion sounded on the street, and rain fell from the sky on top of the smoke. A row of Mechas in front were bombarded by firing shells, and the loud explosions reached everyone's ears. The houses on both sides were affected by the aftermath of the explosion and instantly collapsed into rubble. A tall dark red figure suddenly flew out of the thick smoke, holding a giant mechanical blade and slashing at the many guards in the front row. Xiao Hanyan snorted coldly and raised her jade hand lightly. The tail fin underneath him swung, causing circles of water to ripple on the ground that turned into a lake. The ground beneath the feet of the red Mechas speeding through the air suddenly turned into clear blue water. A beam of water rose into the sky from the lake, and in an instant it hit the red Mecha that was standing up to control. The huge momentum forced the red Mecha to turn sharply in mid-air and directly hit a building behind it. The open facade in the cockpit looked distorted as he manipulated the Mecha to stand up from the collapsed wall and looked at Xiao Hanyan in the distance. As expected of the leader of Yuhei base, he acts decisively. Xiao Hanyan directly abandoned the outskirts of the base and led the remaining troops to surround and defend the middle ring of Yuhei. The awakened ones also gave up fighting the Mecha army and instead attacked the corpse group on the other side. Relying on the geographical advantage and the sky-wide artillery fire coverage, the defense line established in a short time was really difficult for the Mecha army to break through. But Kylie suddenly sneered, took out a disk device, raised his hand and slapped one of the buttons heavily. Suddenly, a hum of mechanical operation sounded from behind the Mecha army. "Look, look!" Suddenly, an exclamation attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked up and saw a huge black shadow falling from the sky from far to near. There was a loud bang, and a huge body like a high-rise iron tower fell to the ground. The smoke dispersed, and a pair of red eyes emerged from the depths of the mist. Only then did everyone see clearly that the person coming turned out to be a steel-armored monster that was several feet taller than the Mecha, and its whole body was made up of pieces of dark red metal machinery. The armored monster's body was dark red, its steel skeleton was hollowed out, its size was as big as a tall building, and a huge gear saw was welded on its right arm. Please enjoy the latest masterpiece of Zilan Base's technology. We call it Donner No 1. John Kylie's voice came from the armored monster's mouth, with a distinct mechanical texture. Roar. The armored monster roared like a beast, and a shocking energy wave burst out from its body. The energy wave with hot flames rushed in all directions, shaking everyone's mind. This energy wave was extremely unstable, suddenly defined as the top of the S level, and in an instant presented a suffocating destructive pressure. As the armored monster's momentum burst out, a large group of crimson lasers suddenly condensed on its chest. The roar stopped abruptly, and a crimson energy beam burst out from the armored monster's chest. In an instant, the front row of guards at the far end of the street and several tanks behind them were all annihilated under the exploding energy beam. A deep gully appeared on the ground, and there was no sign of life where the beam passed. Many guards looked horrified and fell into despair. The hot waves around them mixed with rain slapped their cheeks. Ha ha ha, see, this is the real dawn of mankind. At the same time, hundreds of awakened people on the street were surrounded by countless mutant zombies. The zombies fell one after another like a wave, and the sound of biting and gnawing was horrifying. The Mecha army also launched a full-scale attack at this moment, with missiles on their shoulders and lasers in their hands. Just when the Yuhei people fell into despair, a bright and holy light suddenly burst out in the sky. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo. Chapter 228. This is. The holy light shone on everyone's bodies, warm and genial, blowing away the coolness of the rain. Everyone suddenly looked up to the sky, only to see a huge silhouette of a seraph appear under the haze that covered the sky. The angel still had his arms folded, his eyes closed, and his face even more blurry. Wearing a gauze, 6 pairs of wings spread out behind her, emitting an extremely holy golden light. The huge figure of the seraph instantly blocked the dim haze in the sky, and warmed everyone's heart like a warm fire. In an instant, the light shone brightly, and the holy light like the sun fell down like a curtain of rain. Countless zombies below were illuminated by this light curtain, and they actually let out hysterical wails. There was an instinctive look of fear in the bloodthirsty eyes. Immediately afterwards, the moment the bodies of these zombies came into contact with the soft light curtain, it actually began to fester and evaporate at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into white withered bones. Even the bodies of high-level zombies became bloody in an instant. Roars one after another resounded through the streets of Yuhei, and the rising blood dyed the streets red. This golden light curtain gradually became more intense, illuminating the galloping Mecha army. The pace of those mechas actually slowed down strangely. Even the missiles flying in mid-air seemed to have stalled and crashed to the ground. The dark red steel-armored monster seemed to be suppressed in some way. The figure paused, black smoke billowing from the huge body, and the sound of gears turning echoed. Meow meow. Looking at the shadow of the angel protecting everyone in the sky, Xiao Hanyan frowned slightly. While Meow Meow's abilities are powerful, they also come with huge side effects. This side effect will be directly reflected on her fragile body. As the ability is used, the burden on Meow Meow's body will gradually increase. She knew that it would be cruel to let Meow Meow suffer such harm at such a young age. But now we have reached a critical moment of life and death for Yuhei. There will be a glimmer of hope if Meow Meow is dispatched, otherwise the Yuhei base will be destroyed, and countless humans will meet a tragic end at the mouths of zombie monsters. As the leader of one base, this is a necessary decision. However, at this moment, a bustling noise suddenly came from the crowd behind. A figure covered in blood rushed out of the team. This is a man wearing a guard uniform, half of his body has been stained red with blood, and there is a ferocious blood hole the size of a bowl on his shoulder. Colonel. The guard man limped up to Xiao Hanyan with an anxious look on his face. Oops, the central hospital has been invaded by a heterogeneous cult. What? At this time, even Xiao Hanyan's expression instantly became moved. There is the most important person in the central hospital who is related to the success or failure of this battle. She suddenly raised her head to look at the huge angel shadow in the sky, and suddenly said, "Meow meow." In the central hospital a few kilometers away from the front-line battlefield, a group of mysterious hooded men in black robes walked through the corridors of the hospital. A large number of medical staff and soldiers were lying around the corridor. There are still bullet marks and splattered blood on the walls. At the end of the corridor, several guards with guns came over after hearing the news. When seeing these figures in black robes, a guard shouted, "You! Turn to pull the trigger." But before he could finish his words, a gloomy claw mark had already broken through the air. A blood stain instantly appeared on the guard's neck, and several guards nearby were also attacked to death. "Walk!" The leader of the men in black robes shouted and rushed directly towards a treatment room at the end of the corridor. A group of men in black robes directly opened the door of the treatment room, and a quiet ward suddenly appeared in front of them. On the white hospital bed, a silver-haired girl wearing a dress lay quietly on it, with a faint light emitting from her body. The silver-haired girl's body was covered with life-sustaining medical instruments, her petite breasts were rising and falling, and a thin layer of cold sweat was soaked on her forehead. The last guardian of Yuhei base, Seraphim Meow Meow. The leader of the men in black robes broke into the ward, a fierce light flashed in his eyes, and without saying a word, he reached out to grab the girl on the bed. However, in the next moment, a blood-stained bandage cut across the sky, with an eerie and cold light shining on the strip. With a pop sound, one of the black-robed man's arms was cut off completely by a bandage as sharp as a blade. The man in black robe covered his broken arm and fell to the ground howling miserably. His companions beside him were shocked. "Who? Kakik." Suddenly there was a burst of feminine laughter from the window, and the tentacle-like bandages quickly flew to the corner. Along with the rumbling in the sky, a flash of thunder flashed across, reflecting a slender figure by the window. I saw this figure whose whole body was wrapped in blood-stained bandages, with a plump and protruding chest. Only one scarlet, bloodthirsty eye was exposed. The bandaged figure suddenly looked at the group of men in black robes in front of the door. A single eye wrapped in a bandage flashed, with undisguised murderous intent in its pupils, and a strong murderous aura erupted from the whole body that was almost ready to engulf the person. Instantly, the bandage man flashed, and countless sharp bandages with metallic luster passed through the air. A few breaths later, the whole ward was filled with creepy wailing and screaming and the perverted laughter of women. In the Dongshan battlefield thousands of kilometers away from the Yuhei base, a fierce battle that was no less fierce than the Yuhei base was taking place. After a series of battles in the ruins of the city, most of the guards of the Yuhei army were sacrificed, and even the awakened ones suffered heavy losses. The morale of the Yuhei side was already decadent. At this critical moment, the mecha troops of the Zilan base suddenly rebelled and joined forces with the heterogeneous religion to surround the Yuhei reinforcements. In addition, 2 destruction-level guardians turned against their opponents, and Wufa joined the heterogeneous religion. Wang Deipen even took his Shenlong society out of the matter, which directly became the last straw that broke the camel's back. Whether it was morale or combat power, the Yuhei side was at an unprecedented low point. In an instant, hundreds of mechas were speeding across the battlefield, followed by many black-robed foreign believers. They had only one goal, to destroy the Yuhei army in front of them. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo. Chapter 229. The overwhelming missile lasers were shooting towards the Jade Sea reinforcements like a drizzle. A group of awakened people stood up to the continuous artillery fire and fought with many black-robed believers and mecha armies in front of the ruins of the base. The mechas produced at the Zilan base are worthy of being the highest technological achievements of mankind today. They are extremely fast, not to mention that the outer shell is also made of some kind of high-tech metal. Even some physically strong mutation-type awakeners can't break through the mecha's solid defense. Hundreds of mechas were like steel beasts. Steam erupted from behind them, and the laser guns held on the mechanical arms continued to shoot towards Yuhei. Behind the group of mechas followed a large group of black-robed cultists whose strength was generally between C level and B level. These heathen cultists gallop across the battlefield, specifically hunting down the ordinary guards and some low-level awakened ones in the Jade Sea team. Moreover, the 4 Kongzi disciples under Wufa were hunting down a fellow human race member on the battlefield like vicious dogs and beasts. Although they still have human bodies, the behavior of these 4 people is more ferocious and cruel than the zombie heretics. I saw these 4 people releasing extremely violent murderous intent, their limbs crawling on the ground like wild beasts, their eyes were blood red, and their eyeballs were bloodshot. The next moment, the 4 wild dog-like people jumped in different directions to kill each other. The thick iron chains scratched deep ravines on the ground. Wherever the 4 black shadows passed, rivers of blood flowed, screams continued, wails filled the field, and limbs lay in the air. As the battle raged, Wei Ying suddenly looked at Wang Deipen, who was watching in the distance. President Wang, do you really want to watch the Yuhei base be destroyed in the hands of these people? At this point, only Wang Deipen, a destructive powerhouse, can turn the tide of the war. In front of the ruins of collapsed buildings in the distance stood Wang Deipen and hundreds of his Thanglong Hui men. When Wang Deipen heard this, he raised his head and laughed, looking calm. I don't need you to worry about this. The Yuhei base will naturally be taken over by the Shenlong Society. Wang Deipen had already made plans for this war over territory. The reason why Wang Deipen accepted the solicitation of the heterogeneous religion was because besides learning Wufa's true identity, and because he learned an even more terrifying news from Zapeo. Even he had to be wary of the origins of the heterogeneous religion, so he agreed to this advantageous and harmless condition. After all, no force from any side would reject a destructive level powerhouse. Boss, we. A subordinate of Shenglonghui next to him looked at Wang Deipen and hesitated to speak. A stern look appeared in Wang Deipen's eyes, and the subordinate immediately stopped talking. Naturally, there are some dissatisfied people among the subordinates of Shenglonghui, but under Wang Deipen's overwhelming strength, they can only remain silent. The guard eagles gnashed their teeth, ignoring the wounds on their chests, and joined in the fighting battlefield. In the center of the battlefield, Mu Qiu casually slapped a black-robed cultist to death and turned to look at the distant sky. Mu Qiu already had a definition in mind regarding the check-in location this time. The place for this decisive battle called Redemption is not on the zombie plain, nor in the ruins of Dongshan base, but thousands of kilometers away. Yuhei Base. Above the iron fence surrounding the entire battlefield, Wu Fa, wearing a red robe, sat cross-legged in the air, looking at the battlefield with half-closed eyes. The Jade Navy fleet was in decline, with both morale and strength at a low ebb. A battle like this without any suspense was not worthy of him taking action. Master Xianji. At this time, Feng Jun, who was wearing a purple robe and looking haggard, suddenly rushed to Wu Fa's side with a strange look on his face. The person sent to the Jade Sea Guardian suddenly lost contact. Hearing this, Wu Fa suddenly turned his head and opened his half-closed eyes slightly. Now the team attacking Yuhei is blocked by the Seraph incarnate as the Guardian. I'm afraid we still need Mr. Xianxi to take action personally. Wu Fa nodded, stood up slowly, and looked at Wang Deipen beside him. Donor Wang, I leave this place to you. A flash of anger flashed in Wang Deipen's eyes. He always hated others teaching him things in a commanding tone. But now that he was living under someone else's roof, he couldn't say much. Seeing this, Feng Jun quickly took out a palm-sized metal ball from his waist. As Feng Jun pressed a button on the ball, a white space door suddenly appeared in front of the two of them. The invisible power of space spread, instantly attracting Ji Yufeng's gaze from afar. Ji Yufeng, who was fighting fiercely with He Anping, who was controlling the white mecha, felt the space fluctuations coming from the distance. His pupils shrank and his face was shocked. This familiar power of space. Haha, are you surprised, White Death? He Anping laughed loudly in the cockpit of the white mecha. Guess where this space door will lead to in the end? Ji Yufeng held the double space blades in his hands, and his body flashed frequently in the air. Do you think the training base built for you was built in vain? Thanks to the space energy you gave us, we were able to develop this supreme masterpiece that spans time and space. He Anping's voice was full of sarcasm. From the beginning to the end, the army of Yuhei Base was a group of deceived clowns in his eyes. As He Anping laughed loudly, Wu Fa's figure had already walked into the space gate. Behind him, there were several purple-robed people and hundreds of black-robed believers. As the space gate closed, Wu Fa and some of the alien believers disappeared completely on the battlefield. And the situation on the battlefield gradually turned to the Mecha army of Zilan Base and the alien religion. The Yuhei army turned from offense to defense, gathering together to resist the gradually invading Mecha army. Is there really no way? Wei Ying stood in front of the team, with countless large and small scars on his body, gritting his teeth. No, there is still one last chance. Ji Yufeng's figure appeared beside Wei Ying, and a decisive look flashed in his pupils under the lens. The white death god of Yuhei took out a deep red injection. Then, in front of everyone's surprised eyes, he injected it into his chest. Intense pain came from his heart, and then quickly spread through his blood vessels to his limbs. Even someone as tough as Ji Yufeng couldn't help but roar, sweat pouring down his forehead, and veins bulging. As the blood-red injection was injected, powerful energy fluctuations erupted from Ji Yufeng's body. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, Mo Xianyu. Chapter 230. In a moment, the energy that erupted from Ji Yufeng's body had reached the peak of S level. When Ji Yufeng raised his hand, the rich space force gathered in the air. The moment Feng Jun opened the space door, he also exposed the space coordinates of another place far away in Yuhei Base. As the energy around Ji Yufeng surged, a white space door gradually appeared in front of everyone. 1 minute. Ji Yufeng's face was distorted, and he roared to everyone. Wei Ying was the first to react, and immediately shouted. All awakened people who can still move, return to the base, the guards team and I will stay together to cover the rear. Wei Ying's momentum was decisive and his expression was firm. He knew that without the awakened people with superpowers, the situation on the entire battlefield would completely collapse to the other side. Those who stayed behind would die, but he still resolutely chose to stay and die with the guards. The awakened people in the Yuhei team reacted and rushed towards the direction of the space light gate. "Brother." Wei Linger on the side looked at Wei Ying worriedly. "Go." Wei Ying looked at Wei Linger with sharp eyes. Although Wei Linger has a proud personality, she can still distinguish the primary from the secondary at this critical moment. She looked at Wei Ying and the many human guards behind him, with tears in her eyes, and nodded heavily. She immediately followed many awakened people into the light gate where the power of space gathered. As the light gate of space opened, the space energy in Ji Yufeng's body began to rage wildly. The feeling of every cell in his body bursting made people feel so painful that they wanted to die. Ji Yufeng gritted his teeth and spit out blood from his mouth. Mu Qiu, dressed in black, passed by Ji Yufeng and nodded gently. "Yes, you really let me see your law." The next moment, Ji Yufeng's face began to become vicissitudes and old. His skin was sallow and covered with deep wrinkles, his back was hunched and bent, and his eyes were out of focus and turbid. In just 1 minute, Ji Yufeng turned from a young man full of vigor into an old man in his twilight years. Ji Yufeng's life was also fading away at a speed visible to the naked eye. This is the side effect of forcibly activating the power of time and space. "Brother." Ji Yu, who was in front of the light gate, saw Ji Yufeng's old appearance and hurried forward to help him up. "Hurry, hurry up." Ji Yufeng's voice was hoarse. He had reached the limit of his lifespan and even spoke with all his strength. There must be another way. Ji Yu's eyes were tearful, her pupils were silvery white, and the veins in her eyes had already bulged due to excessive use of her supernatural powers. She tried to use her pupil skills to find the enemy's flaws. However, the silver pupils that were always invincible on weekdays were still useless at this moment even if they were developed to the limit. What she saw was still a desperate black color. "All those who stayed here will die." Ji Yufeng's energy was exhausted, and the space light gate gradually dimmed. A figure in a black robe walked slowly to the light gate. Behind the light gate was his last check-in location, Yuhei Base. However, just as Mu Qiu was about to enter the light gate, a fireball as bright as day came crashing in. The scorching flames hit him head-on, instantly burning and destroying the space gate. The raging fire spread along the ground to Mu Qiu. "Mu Qiu." Wang Deipen's figure stepped in from a distance, his face full of resentment. The leader of the Shenglong Society held a sawtooth broadsword, and dazzling flames were burning on his arms. Both of his cotters were killed by Mu Qiu in the trial battle. In the face of the situation, even he could only grit his teeth and swallow his anger. Since then, Mu Qiu has become a thorn in Wang Deipen's eyes and flesh. Mu Qiu still held the Void Giant sword that Wang Deipen had always wanted. The extremely powerful ability that could bless the user's strength. Thinking of this, Wang Deipen's face became more and more ferocious. How many plans did the black-clothed young man in front of him hinder? Now he can finally avenge his previous shame. He swore to burn the man in front of him into charcoal. Who? Suddenly, a flame that was more fierce and hot than Wang Deipen's fire burst out in the air. This flame showed a dark red color that was hotter than Yayan, like the infinite fire in hell, and quickly swallowed the Yayan released by Wang Deipen. The two flames that swallowed and entangled instantly turned into a dark red sea of fire. A slender figure slowly stepped out of the endless sea of fire, and his body was accompanied by a thick black gas like ink. "You really want to stop me?" Mu Qiu, who was wearing a white shirt, walked out with a faint smile, and behind him was a raging sea of fire. The black robe he was wearing had been burned by the flames. The surrounding black mist wrapped around Mu Qiu, mixed with hot flames to form a flowing fire black robe for him. Wearing a black robe, with flowing flames flying on it, fluttering in the wind, behind him was a sea of fire made of endless karmic fire. As Mu Qiu stepped lightly, the sound of tiger roars and dragon roars came faintly from his side. The sea of fire behind him vaguely condensed into a red dragon, howling to the sky in the flames. Under Mu Chiu's feet, black flames were surging, gradually gathering into a huge black flame tiger. The fire dragon roared behind him, the black tiger crawled under his feet, and thousands of fires surrounded the figure in black robes, as if welcoming a supreme king. The surging pressure swept towards the surroundings, and the air in the whole city instantly became hot and burning. The heat wave hit the faces of everyone on the battlefield, and the soldiers of Yuhei base looked sluggish. They all looked at the slender figure surrounded by black flames in front of the sea of fire in disbelief. Not long ago, this black flame was an indelible nightmare in their hearts. In that case, let's have some fun. The domineering and arrogant voice reached Wang Deipen's ears, and the firelight reflected the latter's shocked face. This familiar voice, this fierce fire that seemed to engulf everything in the world. The various things that Mu Chiu showed reminded Wang Deipen of the existence that made him hate it even more. In front of the sea of fire, Mu Chiu's figure gradually overlapped with a certain existence in his heart. Although he was not wearing the red-faced and fanged evil ghost mask on his head, and there were no scary black shadow monsters around him. But Wang Deipen still recognized Mu Chiu's true identity in an instant. Holding the sawtooth broadsword tightly in his hand, with angry flames raging on his body, Wang Deipen gnashed his teeth, almost speaking out the name that he hated so much from his teeth. Shura.